Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile. The show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Mike Renner, JP Acosta, Kyle Long. We'll be doing a little Monday Night Football recap. We'll be doing Kyle's Trench Takes, JP's Playbook, my rookie report, and our Upon Further Review segment. But let's get with that Monday Night Football recap because Detroit, after a lot of people, no one on this booth, though, wrote them off after week one. They go in and they beat the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore 38-30. One of the most impressive offensive performances we've seen all season. Over obviously hits in that game. They were 5.5-point dogs going into that game and rolled the Ravens. JP, what was your number for this game?
My number for this game was 59%, which is Detroit's success rate on all their runs. This felt like a classic Detroit Lions football game. As soon as they figured out that the Ravens could not defend duo very well, they just ran right behind Penei Sewell for the entire game, running duo, running gap scheme, and you could tell that they mowed them down. You could tell they didn't have Nnamdi Madubuike in there, and as soon as they started like leaning on them in the run game, everything started to open up. I actually thought this was a really good game for Jared Goff, especially when it came to setting protections, getting the line set up at the line of scrimmage. I think Peyton Manning has said on the Manning cast before the game that Jared Goff had wanted to be better at communicating with the offensive line, with the offense after week one's loss to the Packers, which, of course, most of that communication was done by Frank Ragnow. Now that Frank's not here, Jared Goff has to do more of that, and this felt like the culmination of everything that the Lions wanted to be and everything that the Lions are in one game on the road against a very good Baltimore Ravens team. This felt like get your swagger back type of game for Detroit.
Yeah, while we're doing numbers, Mike and JP, my number is going to be 4, and I just came up with that. That's the rushing touchdowns, and I've talked about this on the pod before. When your offense can run the football into the end zone with a running back, it is demoralizing for a defense. And you heard Dan Campbell talk at halftime about time of possession. And, you know, a game like this with offenses like these, time of possession, draining momentum, and adding to your own momentum is huge. Running the football into the end zone. 4 of those. The balance David Montgomery showed on that real hammer to the nail in the coffin for the Ravens defense was incredible. I love that they've got 2 guys that you can lean on for. To be honest, people think David Montgomery's a short yardage only, and Jahmyr Gibbs is can run around the defense, make a guy miss, and hit a home run. Gibbs can run the short yardage, and Montgomery can hit home runs too, although not very far. It's got to be a short porch for David Montgomery. He got caught last night. But they lean on their strengths. And, some of the offensive line issues, they showed up last night, even in the shadow of their own goalpost. Clam Gaskell got Reggie White hump moved by John Jenkins. By the way, crazy, Jenkins is still in the league, played against that guy in Chicago. He was a son of a bitch to practice against. I hated trying to block him. He's up to his same stuff. But the Lions, they lean on their strength. Jared Goff, it's a quarterback-driven league, and only if you run the football can you have success. They've got both those things. And how about the 4th and 2? The nuts on Dan Campbell for going heavy play action. Amon-Ra St. Brown right out of the little tight end, the ghost tight end spot. Beautiful acting job by him as well. Just leaning on your players. That's really the theme, is confidence in the guys that Brad Holmes has brought into this building. And it's special. Aiden Hutchinson's healthy. I thought it was going to be like week 8 before we saw him looking like himself. And game-breaking plays like the peanut punch. It's awesome to see the Lions like this, and I have reshuffled my power rankings accordingly after last night.
Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson, that was the first game where he really looked like the guy we saw last year. Obviously, it was the big sack in the 4th quarter, the big forced fumble against Derrick Henry, ball security. What's going on at this point in time? That's 2 games now. I'm not saying they lost because of Derrick Henry. The first game, you could say they lost because of Derrick Henry's fumble. I don't think they lose that game without Derrick Henry's fumble. But it basically torpedoed any chance of a comeback for them. I did have to laugh, though, because the next touchdown, I highlighted Aeneas Peebles. So I highlighted Aeneas Peebles and Jackson Hawes on the rookie report last week. Jackson Hawes, awesome game yet again. Aeneas Peebles, ball rolls right through his gap on that run. The David Montgomery, he tried to do a little too much there, ended up giving up that game basically ending score. But my number, since we're all doing the numbers, 0. Jared Goff has been sacked 0 times the past 2 weeks. That's the biggest thing here. this offensive line, this interior offensive line that week one, everyone's like, the sky is falling, all new guys from what we saw last year. Not all new guys. Graham Glasgow still there, but a new position at center. And it's like, it's turned around wholesale. They were fantastic in this game. Christian Mahogany was moving people in the running game. I thought that interior held up so well in terms of pass protection, and 0 sacks now, back-to-back weeks. That's what it's going to take for this Detroit Lions team, because if you could just have Jared Goff be a facilitator, the amount of playmakers at his disposal is crazy. I love the route Sam Laporta had early on this game. I was watching the Manicast and they called it out. It was man coverage, and it's just a hitch route against man coverage over the middle of the football field. That's tough to get open on. That's a route as a tight end where you could probably count on one hand the amount of guys that really can run that consistently and get open. And to do that, I believe it was Malachi Starks, to do that, have Jared Goff's trust to throw with anticipation and create a window like that. That's just, there's too many guys at their disposal that you really can't go toe-to-toe with this team. No one can go toe-to-toe with the team without pressuring Jared Goff consistently.
And I think, especially for the Ravens side of this, you waste another incredible Lamar Jackson performance.
Like, a lot of those.
I think it was the drive before halftime where he's like just gliding around the pocket. He like scrambles for like 15 yards. Then he throws like a beautiful out route to DeAndre Hopkins, like right on the sideline. And then the Ravens go and score a touchdown again. I think it was like a Rashad Bateman, like really cool variation of like those crossers you'll run in like the red zone. And Rashad Bateman just ran a whip route to beat the crossers. But Lamar was incredible. And I still think they left plays on the board because he was sacked 7 times. I think that is the highest. That's the most Lamar's been sacked in a game. I think Jack Campbell did a really good job as the spy. And they had incredible integrity on their rush lanes on Lamar as a scrambler, even though they still gave up 30 points and Lamar was fantastic again as a passer. Shutting off that water as a runner, as a scrambler, was a really good job by Detroit's defense.
2 things that stood out to me. The Ravens are getting this stuff out of their system early. Okay. And you mentioned the 2 huge fumbles for Derrick Henry, Mike. I'd rather have it happen now than later if I'm a Ravens fan. The other thing, I was talking about the O-line week 1. I'll own up to it, the interior of the offensive line for the Lions. But you have to take into consideration who they were playing against. The other thing is the creativity is still there. The way they got the speed option in the low red was one of the sexiest actions I've ever seen.
We're getting to it. We're getting to it later in JP's playbook.
Oh, JP, I'm so glad. Stuff like that is awesome, and I'll save it for that. But I credit John Morton, who, when going into the season, was asked if he is going to try to emulate the Ben Johnson offense. And he said, no, I'm running the Dan Campbell offense, whatever he wants to run. So, Dan Campbell, hats off to you for taking notes, buddy, because those geniuses that you had on your staff, they have rubbed off on you a little bit.
And that play action pass you talked about earlier to Amon-Ra, that where he kind of slipped through on Duo, the reason that was so successful is because they kept hammering him with Duo, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is a great blocker trying to dig out those safeties and Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey a lot during that game. So in 4th and 2, you do that motion to get him there, and then Amon-Ra just sneaks right behind you. That's a game-breaking play. And again, everything just builds off of each other in this offense. It is incredible watching the Lions when it's all working together, because you don't know what's what.
All right, there's your Monday Night Football game. Felt like a little heavyweight bout. Great cap to a great week 3.
Super Bowl preview ?
Oh, don't even.
Sorry, Mike.
What happened week 1?
We don't shit the bed against the Browns and expect to make it to the Super Bowl. By the way, they were talking. I heard the undefeated word last week coming out of the locker room.
Oh, well, I never thought that.
Buddy, I heard it come out of the locker room. I will find the clips I'll send them in for tomorrow's show.
They lost to the Dude Wipes Browns.
Buddy, the little elf guy was laughing hard out there.
The Browns.
All right. Let's take a quick break. After that, we need Trench Takes, JP's Playbook, and my Rookie Report. Coming up next.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount+.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah. All right, boys and girls. Now it's time for the Trench Take. Sponsored by Nationwide. Just like any good O-lineman can protect the quarterback in open lanes for the run game, Nationwide offers great insurance and great financial services. Nationwide is on your side. You know who's also on your side more often than not? Myles Garrett, if you're an offensive lineman, okay? He has an easement. So right now I'm dealing with the power company in Florida, and they have an easement on my property, which means they can go in and mess with my stuff and, bury a power line if they want. Put one of those boxes that, we used to wait at the bus stop for. Remember those little metal boxes
Yep.
So they have an easement. Myles Garrett has an easement in every backfield he ever plays against. And my Trench Take this week is going to just be talking a little bit about what goes into preparing to block Myles Garrett or trying to impede him in any way. And some of the things that Myles Garrett has incorporated into his game as a result of the things that the offense is doing. So I've got some still frames here that Harry has put together for me from Twitter. And what you see here is you see my guy Orlando Brown Jr. over there on the right side of the screen going against number 95, Myles Garrett. And, this conversation has come up from some great Twitter clips that I've seen because, let's be honest, there's a lot more appreciation for line play now on the internet. So the number one rule when you're dealing with the potential of having a 3 technique inside of you and a good rusher outside of you is that you don't want to get any width from the line of scrimmage, okay? When you get your inside foot off the imaginary straight line, that opens your hip up for that defensive tackle to come get you. So for Orlando Brown, the coaching point would obviously be just stay along that line. So you see where Myles Garrett is right now. Switch the freeze frame and show me the next one. So now Myles Garrett has gone from sprinter track start, Olympic track start up the field, threatening your edge with speed, to being able to put all 270, 280 pounds.
Yep.
His outside foot goes in the ground. He's able to cross face. Now, we've seen the cross face rush from Myles Garrett. It's burned into our retinas as offensive linemen, understanding that in one pixel of film, Myles Garrett can cross your face. Now, the cardinal sin for an offensive lineman is getting beat where, guys?
Inside.
The cardinal sin is getting beat inside because the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. I learned that in school. So you want to force these defenders to go outside. Well, Myles Garrett understands that we have to respect the inside move. So he threatens the inside move. Now, what you see from a lot of rushers is a head fake inside, some form of bullshittery that doesn't work. This guy, Myles Garrett, understands that in order to threaten your inside, you have to get inside of them. So he fully goes with the inside move. Now, Orlando Brown braces for impact, looks to take away the inside, but his feet, because of this Euro step action that Myles Garrett is doing, because of the constant threat of getting beat upfield with speed or speed to power, you are living in no point of power as an offensive lineman. And Myles Garrett, I give him a lot of credit for understanding this. One thing that Myles Garrett has to do, and this goes back into the game planning portion, is he has to deal with guys that are receivers, tight ends, fullbacks, or running backs coming to try to blast his rib cage every play. So when he does get no chip, now go back to the first picture here, Harry. There's nobody really chipping. There is somebody leaving on a route, but he may have deemed them to be a non-factor physically, and he says, okay, I can play my game here. I can set up this tackle. When he gets opportunities to set up tackles, he wins. Pure and simple, he wins. It's like Saquon Barkley getting the football. He's going to run for 4.5 yards before he gets touched for the most part. Myles Garrett's going to win. So he sets up this bad base by Orlando Brown and hits him with speed to power on the Euro step. It's unbelievable. So another thing that Myles Garrett does is he's cognizant of the chip. And oftentimes Mike has heard me complain about how a chip deters offensive tackles. And if you were to ask a lot of offensive tackles, they would say, Coach, I do not want you to chip this guy. Because when you get chipped as a defensive end, you often ricochet off the chip, which is essentially, Talladega Nights slingshot move to get you started faster than I expect you to go. So as an offensive tackle, I'm going to stand up here. I'm actually going to move my chair. Let's see if this can work. Okay. So, hell yeah. Okay. So if I'm an offensive, stay right there. If I'm an offensive tackle and Myles Garrett is right here and my buddy is right next to me, the one thing we're not doing is getting beat where, guys?
Inside.
So I can't even move from this spot because if my tight end does his job, Myles Garrett's going to get ricocheted right into the V of my neck. Myles Garrett understands that, and he beats tight ends with such ease that now that rule that I just gave you, it goes right out the window because you got to be ready for speed even on these. So I'm going to scoot up. So now my set, usually on a defensive end with chip help, is this as a tackle. And I'm staying still. It's not a big Lane Johnson kick, which you've seen. It's not the Joe Thomas vertical set. It's right here. You live right here, like Hitch. Like Will Smith told that big guy on Hitch, you live right here, buddy. Boom. Because if you don't live right here, you're going to get beat inside. Myles Garrett now is getting chipped by receivers. He's getting chipped from the backfield. He knows when it's coming, and he is setting you up, using your own help against you. He's using jiu-jitsu out here. So if I'm Myles and I'm rushing against this tackle, I am going to pretend to be blocked by this tight end. I can actually use it to get across your face. He's strong enough to dip and rip underneath inside. He's strong enough to go outside. There's no position you can be in as an offensive tackle that is advantageous against Myles Garrett. My point is this, guys. Somebody needs to do something, write a letter to Roger Goodell. They need to have a meeting. We can't let this guy, Myles Garrett, continue to ruin offensive game plans. I know it's fresh wounds with Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers, but I've got wounds too from defensive linemen. And I just thank God every day that I did not have to play against Myles Garrett or that he didn't reduce to 3 technique when I was playing. But when you're watching your favorite offensive lineman play against him, give him a little grace, okay? He's working against a superhuman. Myles Garrett, I would suggest watching him every week. The other thing I'm quickly going to touch on while I catch my breath, Will Campbell is an NFL offensive tackle. The mistakes, the quarterback hits, the pressures, the losses, as I've seen, are as a result of breaking that cardinal sin, which is oversetting. Will Campbell, when he does less with his feet, is going to be a very good offensive tackle. We saw Herbig have some success against him, but he overset. I also saw him put paws on TJ Watt in a good way. I like Will Campbell a lot. We had questions about him coming in, and that's my take on Will Campbell. I think he's going to be a really good pro. The trench take, obviously, from last night is offensive line matters. Interior offensive line matters more than ever. With the return of the running game, with play action being so paramount in the National Football League, you better have a badass at center. And everybody's trying to find him right now. So that was the Trench Take, sponsored by Nationwide. Nationwide, so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies, too. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side. Nationwide Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
I actually think the Myles Garrett thing is so cool, and that was awesome. And it's really, when you watch that Packers game, the viral clip of, I think it was Rasheed Walker yelling "Jordan, run!" after the Euro step inside is going viral. It's insane because you don't really hear like, "Hey, help!" when Myles Garrett beats you
Throw
inside.
it.
But something that really stood out watching that game was how threatened the Packers were with Myles Garrett beating them to the edge. They sent the tight end, they sent Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave. They had Josh Jacobs and Luke Musgrave blocking Myles Garrett at the same time with Rasheed Walker. And not only does that speed up your process as your quarterback, but it opens up other opportunities for the other pass rushers on that defensive line. On the sack that Adam Huntington got, Myles Garrett wins instantly around the edge against both the tight end and the tackle. Love is forced to step up into Adam Huntington. You're able to do so much different stuff with the others on the team. And that's why, you know, when you have an elite pass rusher like Myles Garrett who can threaten you to the inside and outside, a rising tide lifts all boats. And when you have the best defensive player in football on your team, he makes things so much easier for them up front.
Do we think Myles Garrett is the best at his – obviously, Myles Garrett's the best at his position. But across all positions, Mike, maybe you can figure out how to word this better for me.
Yes.
Is he the best at his job in the National Football League?
That's a great question.
And you have to take into consideration
so, I mean, like
where he plays, what he's been through, you know, the absolute – shit factory he's had to exist in, just like Joe Thomas. When I think about a great like Joe Thomas, never missed a day at the farm in Cleveland and was amazing. And Myles has been the same. Is he the best in the league at his position?
I think the only other guy I would even entertain the conversation with right now is Fred Warner.
That's who I was thinking.
Because, I mean, at running back, Saquon, Derrick Henry, it's like there's competition there. Wide receiver, there's obviously strong competition, whether it's Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Offensive line, I don't know if there's anyone who right now is playing at a level that's like you really haven't seen before. Whereas Myles Garrett, I mean, we haven't seen this since J.J. Watt. And J.J. Watt even was J.J. Watt was probably more impactful at times, but only because he was more difficult to game plan for because he was kind of an interior player. Like he really...
He would line up over me. He would line up over the end. He would, you know.
And so you can put a bunch of resources to stopping Myles Garrett and semi-neutralize him from really taking over game plans in a way you couldn't with J.J. Watt. But it's not as if J.J. Watt was like the much better player than Myles Garrett. I think Myles Garrett's probably on a one-on-one basis. If you just give him one-on-ones, Myles Garrett's going to win a lot more, and it's going to be a lot scarier for your offense. So, yeah, I think Myles would be. But, again, Fred Warner's probably the only one I'm entertaining the conversation with.
I agree. When you think about math changing players on defense, you have to put more bodies into defending Myles Garrett, which reduces your ability to get 5 out into your receiving concept. It reduces your ability to use tight ends in the passing game because everybody's got to block Myles Garrett. The only person that's really similar is Fred Warner, and the reason I think Fred Warner is even close is because you can't throw over the middle of the field with Fred Warner in the game. You just avoid that area. But Myles Garrett is we talk about field tilters at receiver and field tilting speed. I think the same thing can be said about pass rushers and that field tilting ability because he has the talent, he has the play, he is able to flip a game instantly. And you saw it in the Packers game. The way that he impacted every single down, they couldn't run at him, they couldn't run away from him. And if you tried to chip block him, like you said, he's just going to use that force into creating pressure and creating lanes for others.
All right, JP, let's get to your playbook. That trench take was outstanding today, Kyle. Thank you.
All right, so first play of the playbook this week. We're going to Minnesota in the backup bowl, and Brian Flores invited Jake Browning and the Bengals to every single layer of hell on one play. Jake Browning and the Bengals did not have a very fun day at the office playing Brian Flores. For the Vikings to win this game, they needed a masterclass from their defense with Carson Wentz as their quarterback, and Brian Flores sent them the whole 9. He threw the entire playbook at Jake Browning. My favorite play is this one on, I believe it was an obvious passing situation, third down. There are 8 people at the line of scrimmage upon first viewing of this play. You're thinking cover 0. It's like, oh crap, they are sending everybody. And the biggest thing you can do against cover 0 is run a screen. You want to get the ball out quick because they are going to try and hit you hard. They're going to try and hit you as fast as possible. And shout out to Harry for all these amazing graphics because this next one is what happens after real quick. So they spin cover 1. Now, Jake Browning's like, oh, crap, completely different look. You don't know what's happening. He goes up to the line, cans the play because they were going to run a screen because it was cover 0. So they spin out of that. in the cover one. And now you're thinking, all right, we got all the man beaters possible. We got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, one-on-one situations. We have the advantages here. Next slide for me, Harry. They spin it to cover 2 man upon the snap with Harrison Smith running from the backside of the line of scrimmage all the way to the deep half of the field. I think Harrison Smith has to have logged the most miles of any player in the NFL since Brian Flores got to Minnesota, because he runs his ass off every single game. So you spin from cover 0 to cover 1 to 2 man, all in the span of like 15 seconds. And as a quarterback, you're thinking, I have to diagnose everything that's happening right now just before the ball gets snapped. And then when the ball does get snapped, Andrew Van Ginkel is in your face immediately. He gets sacked for a 9-yard loss, and the play is over. And that's the way you can tie coverages with your pass rush. You can throw so many different things at a quarterback that you know you're going to throw every single thing at them. You're going to get them into every single layer of hell. The Isaiah Rodgers pick 6 was also very cool. They were able to spin in the cover 2, but instead of being in normal cover 2, they spun one of the safeties down off the roof and then spun the backside corner to the deep half while sending the backside safety all the way across the field to the other half. And Jake Browning doesn't know where to go with the ball. There's nowhere to go with the ball because his initial read was completely covered. It's so difficult playing a Brian Flores defense because you don't know what to expect in between downs. It's very similar to, I think there was a play that Spags ran in the playoffs against the Dolphins where they spun from cover 1 to cover 2, then back to cover 1. And I think that Tua threw a pick on it. There's nothing you can do within that span of like 10 seconds where you're processing all this information and then the ball gets snapped and you're done. So credit, shout out Brian Flores for making Jake Browning's life an absolute disaster on Sunday in what might be the funniest but also most dominant defensive win of the season.
It blows my mind that it took this long to get this point in the NFL. I just remember coming up as an analyst over a decade ago. 2012 was like my first year, and you could tell coverages and like what a defense was going to run a good portion of the time pre-snap. Like defenses basically showed you their shell the majority of the time, what they were going to do. There was not a lot of, and if anything, it was like you'd see a safety rotation, right? You would see one safety go from single high to then one drops down to, and you get 2 high. It's like that was what you would get. You didn't get front rotations. You didn't get things of that nature that you're seeing now. That's just like, I don't know why not. And now a lot of times, making that simple for guys on the football field is the ultimate goal, is that you can't have them processing a bunch of different things. You need smart football players to run a lot of these defenses that we're seeing nowadays. But when you have them, it's like it impacts quarterbacks so much that if you can basically every single time not have a quarterback have any clue what the coverage is until, half a second after the snap, you're going to win more often than not when that's the case. If a quarterback does not know it until well after the snap, you are going to win that as a defense more often than not.
Dude, when I got in the league around the same time that you started, Mike, was 2013. And I had the benefit and the luxury of having a very bright offensive-minded head coach in Mark Trestman. Mark Trestman had 2 assistants in Aaron Cromer and Pat Mayer, who have both become very good offensive line coaches. And one thing I remember, I don't remember the pressure packages. I don't remember the guys that were blitzing, but all I remember is Pat Mayer turning around in every meeting saying, "We have answers, bud. Like, we're going to be okay." When I watch Brian Flores' defense, it becomes clear to me that the script has been flipped. And now defenses have answers and offenses are scrambling. And to y'all's point about the half a second of processing time to make adjustments as a passer, post-snap and pre-snap, really, with the time ticking down 2, 1, 0. When they line up in 0, the offensive line goes into 0 mode. and we understand that the ball's going to be out, and if it's caught, it might be a touchdown, we go into tight butthole mode, okay? That's zero protection. So I used to make the call, we would have Lucky or Ringo. Lucky is we're gapping left and we're going to put our arms out wide and we're going to help our buddies. We might have to take 1.5. I used to call it Viagra to the right or Cialis to the left because we got to swell up here a little bit, guys. Viagra and Cialis. So you go into Viagra Cialis mode. There's no untaking Viagra or Cialis mode, okay? And when they rotate out of it and it's no longer zero, and you're like, oh my God, we have to protect for a little bit. Our quarterback actually has to make a read. He's not just throwing it to a void in the field, which, as you guys know, is the answer versus zero outside of the screen game, which you brought up, JP, or the over the middle stuff. When they rotate to this, it not only messes with the quarterback, it not only messes with the offensive line, but you better have damn smart receivers too. You better have guys who know where to line up, what their assignment is, and most importantly, what the adjustment is that they need to make after the snap. I think this is brilliant here, JP. Great stuff.
Thank you. And our next play in the playbook, Kyle mentioned it. I saw it happen on Monday Night Football, and I knew I had to get in here because the Lions ran the option. More teams should run the option. This is what we are here for. And actually, it's really cool because in 2019, the New Orleans Saints ran something very similar on a speed option. Like you see here, I think that's the fullback lined up, and they're going to pitch it to Taysom Hill. Do you know who was on that 2019 coaching staff for the New Orleans Saints? That's right, Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was on that staff. So now you're building. You're constantly building for what you want to be in Detroit. 4th down. You have the tight end out here, out wide. Everybody's packed in. And something that happened last week against the Bears was Amon-Ra St. Brown got this sweep out of the same formation, didn't pitch. There was no pitch. This was just a fullback sweep, but with Amon-Ra St. Brown, who they like handing the ball off to. So everything is constantly building. Everything has a counter in this offense. I think it'll be so fun to play in Detroit for this offense because everything has a counter. So everybody's expecting Amon-Ra St. Brown on a sweep. This is automatic. This is their short yardage guy. Now he gets the ball. He's reading this edge. This edge is now like, oh crap, it's a 2v1. This is a fast break. This is what you watch in the NBA. This is LeBron and D Wade running down at one guy.
Spacing.
Yep, the spacing here is crazy, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs as the pitch man. There's no help. You have nothing here. So Amon-Ra St. Brown reading the edge. If he attacks Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's going to pitch it to Jahmyr Gibbs. If he goes and tries to defend Gibbs, Amon-Ra will keep the ball. He goes to attack Amon-Ra St. Brown, pitches to Jahmyr Gibbs. Look at all that space. Look at that. For a guy as fast as Jahmyr Gibbs, this is a walk-in touchdown. And it's something that I love that the Lions do. They continue to put their best players in advantageous situations. Not only that, but they're always running behind their best player. They're always running behind Penei Sewell. If you watch any Detroit Lions game and they need big yards, run behind Highway 58. And that's exactly what the Lions did here. But I love that they just keep adding the option back into this. The option is so cool. And I think it sort of got phased out with all the passing that we see in football. But the option and some of the wishbone stuff that you see a lot of back in the day, it's coming back to the NFL. It's coming back to college football, but in different forms. It's not going to be under center wishbone stuff unless you like watching Navy football, which more power to you. I also love watching Navy football, but watching Detroit run the option, it was really cool. Always run the option, people.
Well, I'm sorry, Mike. I just want to point one thing out on this play. Harry, would we be able to get the still frame of the first shot? Okay, so the thing that I love about this play the most is that as an offensive tackle on the play side here, usually in the zone game, you're asked to widen a little bit. You know, you want to get this guy out of the gap and off the ball, obviously. When you get this look and when you get this type of front and this play call, the guy that we're reading, we call him the book guy because we're reading him. The offensive tackle's only job is to just drive a nail just north and south. This is a type of play call that you love because you don't have to get any horizontal movement. And a guy like Penei Sewell, you tell Mike Tyson to go in and just hit somebody with an uppercut. That's what he's going to do. And that's Penei Sewell's job here. Makes it real simple. And to your point, this is a lot of fun to watch. They don't have an answer for it on defense. And even if they did, Jahmyr Gibbs will beat them to the pylon.
Two things here. One, got to give some credit to Amon-Ra St. Brown. That pitch did not slow down Jahmyr Gibbs whatsoever. I can't remember who exactly the edge was there, but he played it really well. He did not commit to the handoff. He actually split the handoff and the pitch man, knowing that, Gibbs running wide is kind of a tell in a situation like that maybe something's going on. So he splits it, forces the pitch, but the pitch never slowed down Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs just completely in stride takes it to the house. If that pitch slowed him down just a little bit, I think he might get caught on that play and it might not go for it. But also, too, this was the difference in the game. They convert this fourth down. The Ravens had a fourth down earlier in the game at the goal line. They didn't convert. Lamar actually had the throwback to Derrick Henry if he wanted on that play, but he didn't have anything play side. There was nothing to be had there. So if, roles reversed, Ravens convert that, Detroit doesn't convert this, Ravens are winners last night. So hats off to Dan Campbell, John Morton and company. That was a heck of a play call on a big fourth down. All right, let's get to my rookie report. JP, Playbook was sweet this week, as always. My rookie report is focusing on first rounder I'm going to shout out, but it's because I want to shout out a couple of linebackers this year. Picks 31 and pick 33 in last year's draft. Jahad Campbell, Carson Schlesinger. Linebacker, notoriously in today's NFL, a viciously hard position to translate. The first rounders this decade, I'm going to read them off to you. They're not great in terms of how they started their careers. Jack Campbell, Quay Walker, Devin Lloyd, Zaven Collins, Jamin Davis, Isaiah Simmons, Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks, Patrick Queen. Some of those guys have turned into good players. A lot of them haven't. And a lot of them, if not all of them, I'd say, started off their careers very slowly. That's not the case for picks 31 and 33 this year. Jahad Campbell and Carson Schlesinger look like dudes already. I'll start with Campbell. He's PFF's 9th highest graded linebacker in the NFL, has not missed a tackle this season. And I think the thing I love most about Campbell and his role with the Eagles is that he basically doubles as an edge rusher. They will use him to get from nickel packages, 5 across fronts, 5-man fronts on the defensive line, where he just turns into an edge rusher. I mean, Sam linebacker, whatever, but he is going one-on-one against offensive tackles, and he beat Rob Havenstein this week on just a one-on-one rush. He only had a couple of this game, but bull rush, inside move, beats a veteran offensive tackle, and this is a rookie off-ball linebacker. There are rookie first-round edges that aren't doing what he did in this game as a pass rusher. So his impact there has been massive. Still kind of a work in progress in his reads. You see him, his play speed. I don't think it's as fast as Schlesinger's is right now, just in terms of read and react. But the physical gifts are off the charts and would not surprise me whatsoever if he makes the opposite of the Zach Bond. If they're like, hey, our edge group isn't good enough, we just deploy this guy off the edge in his career going forward because he is that physically gifted, and I think he very easily could do it. Schlesinger, the other one here, he's much more of a true off-ball linebacker, but it blows my mind how big he looks because if you'll remember his story, he was a walk-on at UCLA, was listed at 225 last year. Now he's listed at 243, and I've never seen a guy look that much bigger this quickly and not lose any athleticism. He is flying around at the second level for this Browns defense. Much more of a blitzer than a true pass rusher in terms of just he gets home with speed, but the way he moves, guy just looks like a safety playing linebacker. He's so smooth out in space. He had a play on a screen to Josh Jacobs where just dips around an offensive lineman, gets to Josh Jacobs' feet and takes him down. Not a lot of guys can do that, one, physically, and just two, on a guy like Josh Jacobs, who's not easy to bring down in space. You saw it consistently, Schlesinger be able to do it. And I think you could tell a lot by a linebacker by just how efficiently they tackle. And Carson Schlesinger, when he hits guys, they're on the ground like that. The great linebackers in the NFL, They are not only good tacklers in terms of not missing a lot of tackles. He's only missed 2 on 23 attempts this year, but they bring ball carriers down quickly. They don't get dragged. They're not holding on for dear life. They hit them, they go down. And to me, that's Carson Schlesinger. So these two guys have been huge value adds for their respective defenses.
And the thing that really stands out with Carson Schlesinger, and especially Jahad Campbell too, the play speed and the range, with the way they close gaps, the way they close space is so incredible. Schlesinger had a sack on Jordan Love where he's a spy, and he is flying downhill, like he is moving. And that's something that I was a little worried about entering the draft cycle, was if he was going to put on weight, was he going to lose speed? It doesn't look like he lost speed at all. And that ability in coverage especially really ties together what Jim Schwartz wants to do in coverage, the way they play Tampa 2, the way they're able to get Schlesinger in the middle of the field and just sort of defend that area. It's so fun watching him kind of fly around. And then Jahad Campbell's the same way with how he closes space. I do think that he is still coming along when it comes to reading out blocks. And I think Schlesinger still has a way to come along when it comes to taking on those blocks. I think he'll slip blocks, but he doesn't take them on as strongly as Jahad Campbell, obviously, because Jahad Campbell's like an edge at the same time as an off-ball linebacker. But these two guys, the thing that stands out is they close space so fast for being as big as they are. And in today's game where you want versatility, you want the ability to play in space, those two guys are monsters.
Jahad Campbell has shown it to us now, so you can anticipate protection meetings circling him and saying when he does line up, we have to account for him, because there are certain guys
circling the Eagles now, though.
There's certain off-ball guys that you're just like, we are not going to count him. You know, we don't. Yeah. He ain't coming, and if he is, like, the running back, we got to deal with Jahad Campbell now too. So it becomes another weapon for Vic Fangio. And, you know, you talked about the Lions don't have a play unless they have a counter for it. Vic Fangio doesn't have without a counter as well. So how are they going to use that? And Schlesinger, pull up that picture again, Harry, the one with Jordan Love.
We don't have to put it.
Nice. Nice. Okay, show the other one.
There was more.
Look at Carson's triple extension. Okay, I was just kind of, Mike was taking me down memory lane here about how this young man is bulked up a little bit. Let me just say, it's gone to the right places. Schlesinger looks good. And some guys gain weight, they don't get faster. Some guys gain weight and they get poppier, okay? They get more explosive. Maybe his muscles were just fiending some more calories and he got them. Good for the Browns.
Yeah, I will just say I still cannot believe Jahad Campbell asked him to pick 31 for all the reasons you were saying, JP, in that with everyone looking for, every defense now across the NFL is looking for an off-ball linebacker that basically rushes like an edge. Like that's a cheat code in today's NFL because of just how much blitz packages have evolved and how everyone is basically, a decade ago, there were teams that just like weren't blitz teams, right? We were a 4-man team. You can't just be a 4-man team in today's NFL. Everyone's got to have that. And so it blows my mind that you could pass on Jahad Campbell's skill set, even knowing that linebacker has struggled to translate. But he, in particular, was such a good blitzer. And again, we're talking about how he could legitimately play edge at the NFL level. Such a good blitzer. And then, like, so easy in coverage and, like, has made plays this year running the pole in Tampa 2 and breaking up passes. Like, he's such good range that him failing seemed like such an outlier, and there was an easy path to him for success that we're obviously now seeing in Philadelphia. So, all right, there you have it. There's my record report. We are going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to cap it off week 3 with our Upon Further Review segment coming up.
You can't count on Derek's tongue skills.
Oh, Tony, I think it hit the ground.
But you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
All right, Upon Further Review, Kyle, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I can do that. My Upon Further Review is Bears offense ? Okay. I was excited as the next guy when I saw Caleb Williams have a great day throwing the ball, got to flex some of his superpower muscles. The arm strength was there. The connection with Roma Dunze. I mean, these two guys, they're tied for a league lead in passing and receiving touchdowns. It's special. It's all those things, but I'm cautiously optimistic, and my upon further review involves you guys. Your immediate takeaway from seeing the Bears offense doing trick plays, seemingly scheming guys open, showing some signs of protection. Was it all the Bears or was it the Cowboys? Was it a combination of the two things? And also, when I look around the NFC North, with the way the Vikings dominated, with Carson Wentz, look, you can beat Jake Browning, but to dominate in a game like that, to have the Packers lose a game against the Cleveland Browns, should I even be excited right now as a Bears fan? Like, is there hope? Is the light at the end of the tunnel a train, or is it the light of day?
Well, you definitely shouldn't be excited just because you are a Bears fan. But I will say that for their offense in particular, I did not think so. I thought the struggles were overblown through the first 2 weeks was the bigger thing for me. I was like, Caleb Williams showed signs of life the first 2 weeks. He looked better than we saw him as a rookie. And now he didn't look like USC Caleb. He wasn't completely back. There were still inaccuracies. There were still issues. But you saw improvements that, hey, when they weren't playing defenses that were Brian Flores coach defenses and this Lions defense that's still very talented, when they play a less talented defense, a la the Cowboys, they might be able to roll. And that's exactly what they did because he was a lot better and he had no running game too. And like the running game may not ever come at this rate. I don't think we can bank on them ever having a running game this year.
They lack the personnel.
But it seemed like it was more just early season, better defenses that you're facing that like, hey, there were signs of encouraging signs that when, they face a team like the Cowboys, they face a team like the Raiders next week, that this offense could be nasty. So I think that's what it is to me, is that the struggles are always overblown. I don't think Caleb's all of a sudden an elite quarterback in the NFL, but he was so physically gifted coming out that it was like it wasn't going to take a ton of development for his tools to really shine through and for you to be able to build a high-end offense around him.
I'm still waiting on Colston Loveland too, Mike.
Yeah.
He had a catch.
He had a big catch. But
Yeah.
the thing that really stood out watching this offense was even without the run game, they were taking shots downfield. They are withdrawing big bills only in this offense. They want to get chunk plays. And I think that's noticeably different from the Lions Ben Johnson offense versus the Bears, with how much Caleb Williams attacks downfield for explosives in play action, which I think can be used for the Bears gain this season. And I'd be cautiously optimistic because you saw the growth. You saw the development of Caleb Williams. You saw Rome Odunze playing really well. You got all your weapons involved in the passing game. And there's still another level to be unlocked because once they get an actual person playing running back, there's so much more to be unlocked with the run game. But I do have to say that the Cowboys just aren't a competent defense at this point.
Not a measuring stick game.
Yeah, this was a get right game. I'd say that this was a let's get our groove back. Let's get back into the rhythm of things. They're gonna play the Raiders next week, who I also think they will have the advantage offensively. Let's see if they can get their groove back. Let's see if they can get put together some really good, consistent offense.
One of my favorite things, since you mentioned Colston Loveland, and since I am a big Colston Loveland defender since I was so high on him, one of my favorite things to do is when you watch receivers and you get opportunities where you get multiple guys with a free release and it's like a downfield passing concept. When you see that on the Bears tape, Colston Loveland is beating DJ Moore to the 5 and 10 yard marks. He's getting off the line. When you have a tight end that can do that can threaten down the field, get to those landmarks like a wide receiver does,
opens everything up.
And you saw it in this game. I think he was only on the field. I'm not sure what his injury was, but he was only on the field for like a handful of plays. I think he was targeted on 3 of his 5 receiving snaps because he's getting down the field.
He knows where to be now too, after seeing the speed of the game through the first 3 weeks.
So there's still a lot of meat on the bone. No. All right, JP. What is your on further review? Stop talking Bears.
My upon further review is that the AFC is the Wild West. I have no idea what to make of this conference outside of Buffalo, who is probably going to steamroll the AFC East once again. You have a whole lot of teams that are very good but still have flaws. The Chargers right now sit at second in the conference at 3-0 and have basically a 3-game lead on the AFC West, but they still have a lot left to be unlocked with their run game. Najee Harris is out with a torn Achilles. There's still some weird stuff that could happen because it is the Chargers and they play in a really tough division. I'm wary of the Colts right now because part of me wants to be excited about what they're doing, but part of me also saw Derek Carr and the Saints put up 40 points in the first 2 games of the season before things fell off the rails. But they still have a lot of meat left on the bone, especially because Daniel Jones is using play action at the highest rate in the NFL. He is not being asked to do a lot of standard drop back stuff. So when game script sort of flips on you, is Daniel Jones going to be able to make those plays, which is yet to be seen. Outside of that, Baltimore still going to be very good, but there are a lot of flaws with that Baltimore team, especially on defense. Kansas City's still trying to figure themselves out on offense. Denver is also trying to figure themselves out on offense and what they want to be downfield, especially at the quarterback spot. And then you're looking at teams like Houston is way behind. I don't know if they make the playoffs now, sitting at 0-3. The Jaguars cannot run a play without committing an illegal shift penalty. The Steelers feel like the same Steelers that we've seen before, but this time their defense is a little older and a little slower. And outside of that, there's a lot left up for grabs. So I really want to watch the AFC this year and who comes out, because this could be a really, really fun race to the finish.
I agree that I think the sort of pecking order that we all anticipated heading into the season, if you just look at records right now, it's like that's been just completely blown out the water. Chiefs, Broncos, Ravens, Texans, they have 3 combined wins between those 4 teams right now. We are 3 weeks into the season and those 4 teams have 3 wins. So basically teams we thought would be at the top of the AFC can't win a goddamn game right now. So the NFC is eating the AFC's lunch, though, in these interconference games. It looks like, in terms of the stronger conference right now, that the NFC, at least in terms of quality teams on the whole, the AFC obviously still has the quarterbacks, but it feels like the NFC has the real well-built teams, whether it's the Lions, whether it's the Packers, whether it's the Bucs, Eagles. Like, they have the better rosters right now, it seems like, than the AFC.
AFC is the Wild West, man. And we've been living in this Game of Thrones. Remember, Khaleesi showed up. She was like, I'm going to break the wheel, man. And the wheel, it may not be broken right now. It's still early in the season for a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, who has reigned supreme in the AFC. But it feels like it's anybody's ball game, and we're going to find out what's real. Colts, look, how long is the magic going to happen? And at what point do they have to match production with a great offense? To your point, they can't just go JT, DJ. They're going to have to be a lot more DJ in some of these games, and we want to see how that goes.
All right, I'll get to my upon further review here. And it's about mobile quarterbacks. There's obviously been a big push from just drafting to NFL teams to have guys who can move for a lot of different reasons. I think it gets... Obviously, everyone knows about how much of the quarterback impacts the actual running game with option runs, the favorable looks that gives. But I don't think enough is made about how much it impacts the looks that mobile quarterback gets in the passing game. That's where the actual sort of big gains are to be had, or are had, in my opinion. And one of the plays that really stuck out to me watching this week was the touchdown to Devontae Smith, the game winner. It's not technically game winner since basically the game winner there for the Philadelphia Eagles at the end. On that play, they're 4 yards away from the end zone. They have Brackett on one side and A.J. Brown, but on the other side, they have a safety looking like he's going to be bracketing Devontae Smith, but he has to come and be a spy. because Jalen Hurts, obviously, if you don't have rush lane integrity or he sheds a tackle, he can't get outside and move. And so on that play, if they would have had a bracket on Devontae Smith, there was nothing. No one else got open on that route besides Devontae Smith. But the safety that could have helped had to be eyes on Jalen Hurts, basically taking himself out of pass coverage, out of rushing. He's just standing there doing literally nothing. And that ends up being the game winner. It's plays like that. And you see it again and again when you have a guy who really is able to get outside the pocket and create. And that I would recommend everyone, and we've talked about Justin Herbert's ability to do that more this year, or willingness to do that more this year. We've talked about CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence's inability to really use that as a weapon in your game. Use it as a weapon in your game. If you are an athlete, deploy it, because as soon as defenses have to rush you more with more attention to their rush lanes, they can't really just go free for all with their front four and basically throw gap integrity to the side. If they have to mush rush on the outside and just try to collapse the pocket, that'll give you more time. And then we've seen now 7 quarterbacks in the NFL this year have a higher total rushing EPA per play than the highest running back in the NFL this season. And now it's a little bit skewed because obviously sacks don't get taken into account in that, but running and scrambling are usually such high leverage plays. They're usually things on like third downs. They usually move the sticks. If you are not deploying that, and we're seeing guys like Baker Mayfield, guys who are maybe lesser athletes, they're not Lamar Jackson, they're not Jaden Daniels, but really using that to their advantage. If you can, it is a huge sort of feather in your cap, and it will only help at basically every other thing you do at the quarterback position.
The guy that I first thought of when you started talking about this was actually Baker Mayfield. And in those 3 game-winning drives that he's led this season, they've all been started with scrambles. Baker Mayfield has been able to – it's funny watching him run and watching him scramble, because part of me thinks that Baker thinks that he's Lamar Jackson caliber of an athlete. So he's going to try and run somebody over. He's going to try and do something crazy. But that ability to keep drives alive as a scrambler is huge for offenses, especially as defenses continue to play too high shells, continue to try and force you to take the check down. Most of the time, your check down can just be your legs. That is something that Jaden Daniels won Offensive Rookie of the Year last year, using his legs as his check down. The ability to scramble and the ability to create with your legs. I'm not saying that you have to turn everything into an out of structure, bananas play, but being able to get something out of nothing when plays break down is huge in the NFL, because everybody is faster. Everybody is much more of an athlete. And now you have to do some work outside of structure to really make plays happen.
When you have a quarterback who, I'm going to use the word navigator, when you've got a navigator, someone who can navigate the pocket and extend plays with their legs. By the way, brilliant points, both of you guys. The most explosive plays happen when a quarterback runs up through the A-gap and then back outside the tackle box. Traditionally, we think about scramblers, we think about guys trying to run around behind the line of scrimmage. The best ones are the ones, it's kind of contradictory. The best quarterbacks at scrambling are the ones that stay in the pocket, that step up into the pocket and let the storm form around them. Then they can navigate that A and B gap, and then they can make that decision to run it for 6 yards and slide for a first down, or stress that defense enough when they go to take off, because as we know, eyes are on Josh Allen, eyes are on Lamar Jackson, eyes are on Jaden Daniels, and when eyes are on them, eyes are off the assignment. And that's when you can stress the defense, and that's where the explosive plays happen, where the DBs are pointing at each other after the play. That's a big-time palms up situation. And you can stress the defense with runners.
And on the flip side of that, I actually think it's really interesting looking at some of the teams that have given up the least amount of scramble yards and how they play. And you think about, according to Sports Info Solutions, the teams that have given up the least yards scrambling are the Broncos, Bengals, Patriots. Those teams, they have the ability to rush from within. They have the ability to rush from the middle of the defense, closing off those lanes to rush up the pocket. it's forcing them outside to their speed. One of the teams I think does a really good job at mitigating scrambles defensively are the Chargers. And because the Chargers don't have bend at pass rush on the outside, they don't try and win with speed around the corner. They try and collapse and condense the pocket to reduce those rushing lanes. And I think that's where a lot of teams are trying to go and win now, by using guys that convert speed to power, not only to affect a lot of their pass rush games that you can run, but it closes off rush lanes because those guys are going to have more integrity than a guy that's going to try and bend and try and get to the top side to try and sack the quarterback.
All right, there you have it. There is our Upon Further Review segment. We will be back tomorrow doing our power tiers. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Until next time, keep pushing.